Welcome to Meeting of Minds, starring, from 20th century America, President Theodore Roosevelt. From ancient Egypt, Queen Cleopatra. From the American and French Revolutions, Citizen Thomas Paine. And from 13th century Europe, St. Thomas Aquinas. And now, your host, Mr. Steve Allen.
Thank you very much. In the 13th century, the great poet of Florence, Dante Alighieri, created one of history's literary masterpieces, the Divine Comedy. At the beginning of the poem, Dante is welcomed at the gates of hell by Virgil, the Latin poet. Subsequently, he meets Cicero, Plato, Aristotle, and others who played important roles in history. So the idea of bringing together great thinkers and important personages of various kinds from the past is quite ancient. And it is, I think, an appealing vision. Wouldn't it really be exciting if we could meet the actual flesh and blood Cleopatra, ask her questions about Julius Caesar? Wouldn't it be fascinating to discuss theology with Thomas Aquinas, revolution with Thomas Paine, or the problems of 20th century America with Theodore Roosevelt? Well, by what magic I have no intention of revealing, we can. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll get right to it. First, one of the most fascinating guests it's ever been my privilege to present. You know him not only from your history books, but also from Mount Rushmore. Former President Theodore Roosevelt. Mr. President, we are honored indeed to welcome you, sir. We have this modern device. If you'll just pin it on your waistcoat there, or whatever that is.
Well, it's my pleasure, sir. My pleasure.
Sir, in introducing you, I mentioned Mount Rushmore. Do you like the bust of you on the side of that famous mountain?
Well, naturally, I'm honored to be included in such distinguished company, but I always thought it made me look a little heavier than I thought I was. I always managed to keep myself in good trim, you know?
Yes, so we've heard. In brief, sir, could you tell us what was your political background before you became president?
Yes, well, I was assemblyman in New York State, and civil service commissioner in Washington, police commissioner of New York City, and then assistant secretary of the Navy.
And then after that, I suppose, came your adventures with the Rough Riders in the Spanish-American War.
Then I was governor of New York State, and while governor, I was elected vice president under McKinley.
McKinley, yes.
Then when McKinley was assassinated, I became the youngest president ever to hold office.
Oh, I never realized that.
I was only 43 at the time.
43?
Yes, then I was elected president in my own right in 1904.
I see. Now, to go back a bit earlier, sir, in your career, what were some of the problems that you faced when you were head of the police board in New York? Were they at all the same as now?
Oh, yes, I should think so. There was crime in the streets, violence, fraud, and even police corruption.
Really?
Oh, yes. We had to get rid of our chief of police, Byrne, you know. He had a $150,000 home in Long Island, and he didn't buy that with his police pay. And there were many racial problems,
really?
Including anti-Semitism. I recall a story that you might enjoy. Care to hear it?
Try me and see.
Well, there was this German preacher, Victor Albert, who had come to this country for the express purpose of preaching anti-Semitism. And, of course, wherever he preached, he was loudly picketed by the American Jews. So he came to me and demanded police protection, which, of course, I had to give him under the law.
Certainly.
But I thought I handled the problem quite well.
Oh, how was that?
Well, I assigned him 40 Jewish policemen and a Jewish sergeant.
That was a good story.
Yes, yes.
Now, you were born just prior to the Civil War, Mr. President, as you know, of course. Do you have any particular memories of that period?
Well, I was just a boy, 6 or 7 at the time, but, well, I was aware of what was going on, you see. Now, my father was a merchant and collector of the port of New York City and was quite involved in the Union cause. Now, what's interesting is that my mother, a charming and gracious woman, Martha Bullock, was born in Roswell, Georgia. And she was an avid sympathizer of the Confederate cause. As a matter of fact, her brother was an admiral in the Confederate Navy.
I see. So then you experienced the disagreements of the Civil War right in your own home.
Yes, well, during the Civil War, we were living on 20th Street in Lower Manhattan, and we had a balcony in front of our second-floor window. And I remember one afternoon, my mother draping the Confederate flag over the balcony railing, much to the chagrin of my father and the shouting, fist-waving crowd down below.
My goodness.
She caused a near riot. But one must admit she did have spirit.
Yes, indeed. Speaking of spirit, Mr. President, in just a moment here, we're going to be bringing out that very exciting lady, Queen Cleopatra of ancient Egypt. I don't suppose she'll intimidate you.
Oh, goodness, no, fascinating woman.
Indeed, yes.
I must ask her what she thinks about the subject you're all talking about today.
Oh, what's that?
Women's liberation.
Oh, yes. Well, I'm sure she'll be glad. How do you feel about it?
Oh, well, I've always felt that a woman should have the same rights as a man. And in this country, she must. In my days, women responded wonderfully well to my progressive campaigns. Perhaps they had a more sensitive awareness of the social injustices than men.
It's possible.
Now, I'm reminded in this connection that one of the most noble chapters in the history of our country was written by that wonderful woman who conducted the affairs of Hull House in Chicago. I refer, of course, to Jane Addams.
Jane Addams, yes.
Yes, you know, it always seemed disgraceful to me that those who are motivated by charitable concern for the well-being of their fellow citizens are often described by some heartless people as bleeding hearts or do-gooders. I was so described myself.
Oh, were you?
Yes, but we must realize that what our society needs is more do-gooders.
Well, now, Mr. President, that's a very pretty sentiment, which obviously appealed to our audience here. But if you'll forgive me, sir, I wonder if you might not be guilty of some inconsistency.
Oh?
I've been doing some research on you, naturally, preparing for this interview, and I learned that in 1906, you personally criticized the writers and journalists who were exposing corruption in business and politics at that time. You compared them, in fact, sir, to the muckraker in John Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress. Now,
yes, that's correct.
Couldn't it be said, Mr. President, that those muckrakers or crusading journalists, as they would naturally describe themselves, also could be classified as do-gooders?
Well, yes, I suppose so, but I think what you have here is the question of whose ox is being gored. Now, naturally, I wasn't in favor of corruption, either in politics or in business, but the writers that you refer to had just gone too far.
Oh?
Yeah, they seemed to delight in offering sensational and gossipy details. Of course, I must concede that judgment is just a matter of opinion.
Yes. Well, forgive the interruption, Mr. President. You had started to tell us about Jane Addams.
Oh, yes. Well, she was one of the greatest do-gooders of all time. She established Hull House in Chicago in 1898 for the sole purpose of helping women and children and immigrants find their useful place in society. She and her friends campaigned tirelessly against sweatshop conditions and child labor. As a matter of fact, it was largely through her efforts that the Illinois state legislature passed the first factory law prohibiting the employment of children below the age of 14.
Is that right?
That's right. It also fixed an 8-hour workday for women and provided for the inspection of factory labor conditions by the state.
Well, sir, you say that in such a tone that you seem to be implying that there was great opposition. Now, who could possibly have opposed such a reasonable law?
Well, the answer, Mr. Allen, is practically everybody in power opposed such humane and civilized laws.
Really?
Oh, the masses of the people naturally wanted better conditions, but the ruling powers resisted such progressive legislation for as long as they could get away with it. And I am astounded to observe that today, more than half a century later, they're still getting away with it here and there.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. We naturally have a great many more questions we'll put to you a bit later. Our next guest is certainly one of the most remarkable women in all history. She became Queen of Egypt 51 years before the birth of Christ, when she was only 18. She would have been considered unusual, I'm sure, in any age because she was strikingly intelligent, so attractive that both Julius Caesar and the other great general Mark Antony fell in love with her. And yet she also had the instincts of a master politician. Certainly she's one of the most patriotic women in history. Her entire life, in fact, was dedicated to increasing the power of her country, Egypt, and defending it against the threat posed by Rome. So it's no wonder that she's fascinated such authors as Shakespeare, Shaw, and hundreds of others, I suppose. Ladies and gentlemen, Her Majesty, Queen Cleopatra of Egypt. Oh, Mr. President, Her Majesty has kindly consented to dispense with the formalities befitting her station.
Yes, gentlemen, you may be seated.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Majesty. Now, my goodness, Your Majesty, if I may say so, Your jewelry is breathtaking.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Were any of those perhaps presents from Julius Caesar or Mark Antony?
Oh, no. These have been in the family for centuries. You see, the royal jewels of Egypt were far more glorious than anything even the rulers of Rome could have given me.
Is that right?
Yes.
I notice, if you'll forgive my perhaps appearing presumptuous, I notice that you're wearing quite a heavy eye makeup.
In your opinion. We Egyptians invented makeup. Oh, yes, and we dyed our hair, too.
I hadn't realized that. Tell me, were many of the women of ancient Egypt as attractive as you, Your Majesty?
You're very kind, sir, but I was not of native Egyptian stock. My ancestors were Macedonian Greeks by origin.
Oh, well, I wasn't aware of that, Your Majesty.
Well, I'm not surprised, Mr. President. You Americans are notorious for your lack of interest in history.
I think there may be trouble building between these two.
Oh, no.
All right. Well, if you'll forgive our ignorance,
Yes,
Your
certainly.
Majesty, I wonder if you could tell us what other famous figures of history were contemporary with your period, besides Caesar and Mark Antony, I mean.
Yes, well, there was Cicero, the great Roman orator, Virgil the poet.
And Herod, the king of Judea, was a contemporary of yours, wasn't he, Your Majesty?
Indeed he was, Mr. President. Yes, and it was Mark Antony who put him in power.
Oh.
Mark Antony put Herod into power?
Yes. Yes, Mr. Allen.
Fascinating. That brings to mind now the problem of language. Now, you spoke Egyptian, of course.
Oh, yes, of
ancient
course,
Egyptian.
yes.
And yet most of the famous names that we associate you with, most of them were Romans. They would have spoken Latin, of course. So how did you communicate? How could you tell what they were thinking?
Oh, well, now, I've never had any trouble telling what men were thinking, sir. But actually, I spoke 7 languages.
7 languages?
Yes, indeed. And the international language of my day was Greek.
I see. Now, if I may get into a more personal area,
Yes,
Your
go
Majesty,
right ahead,
with your permission.
anything.
How many times had Caesar been married before you came into his life?
4 times. But his only child had been a daughter until the summer of 47 BC, when I bore him a son. A beautiful child.
I understand you loved that boy with a passion. Your
Indeed I
Majesty.
did, Mr. President. You see, none of Caesar's other wives, though they were patricians, could have borne him a son of royal blood.
Oh, why not?
Well, for the simple reason there was no royalty in Rome. It was a republic at the time, you may recall.
Yes, of
and
course.
to tell you the truth, we Egyptians looked upon the Romans as upstarts.
The Romans were upstarts.
Oh, yes. Well, you see, my own people, my Greek ancestors, that is, had ruled over the native Egyptians for over 300 years. I was of the line of Ptolemies, and we ruled Egypt ever since the time of Alexander the Great.
So you planned that your son, Caesar's son, would rule one day over what exactly?
Well, over the whole known world at the time, Mr. President, because you see, my son would have been a pharaoh, and as such, his royal roots would have gone back even before the time of the Ptolemies. Now, the pharaoh's tombs, you know some of them today as the pyramids, they were ancient even in my day.
Well, I'm afraid, Your Majesty, the attitude toward royalty today sometimes has very little respect for it.
Oh, yes, and more's the pity, Mr. President. I was treated not only as a queen, but literally as a goddess.
Really?
Oh, yes. My people believed that I was the human form of the Holy Mother Isis. And my son, little Caesar, was considered to be the son of the great god of Egypt, Amun.
That's interesting. Now, let me see if I have this straight. You were
Yes.
Caesar's 5th wife, is that correct?
Exactly, yes, that's
I
correct.
see. And were you married before Caesar?
Certainly.
To whom?
To my brother.
What? You were married to your own brother?
Of course. Well, it was a marriage arranged by the Egyptian government. It was the custom. You see, rather than risk having us as rival claimants to the throne, it was assumed that if we married each other, we would rule together.
Disgraceful.
Yes, Your Majesty, that sounds shocking to us today, rather like one of our X-rated movies.
Really? Well, there are many things about your century that are shocking to me.
Oh, can you give us an illustration, Your Majesty?
Indeed I can. I think it was simply idiotic of you to have freed your slaves.
What?
Well, now, there has never been a more efficient method of getting work done than slavery.
Incredible.
Do you think that my people could have built the pyramids, one of the wonders even of your modern world, if we had had to pay wages to the hundreds of thousands of workers? And yet today, not only do you pay your workers, but you indulge in the even more asinine practice of allowing them to organize on their own behalf so that their wages increase almost daily. Well, you boo if you want, but you mark my words, you will eventually create economic chaos in the Western world if you permit your workers to act only out of their own self-interest. All right.
Perhaps
Their own self-interest fortress will
Perhaps,
destroy you.
Your Majesty, if you'll forgive me, I'd better change the subject before they come up and try to take personal part in our discussion. Let me see, what would be a harmless question? How long did the Roman culture last?
Oh, only about 1,000 years.
Only 1,000 years? Our country has only lasted 200. 1,000
Yes.
seems very long.
But you see, sir, the civilization of Egypt lasted for 5,000 years. But I don't mean to downgrade the achievements of Rome. They were considerable. No, you might say that the Romans were the Americans of their day.
Oh, and just what do you mean by that, Your Majesty?
Well, they didn't create a very great deal, Mr. President. No, they didn't, no. The Greeks were the true innovators in philosophy, mathematics, sculpture, architecture, really in everything. The Romans merely borrowed from the Greeks, the Egyptians, the Etruscans, and others. I really think, gentlemen, that their chief contribution to your culture today lay in taking what they had learned and distributing this knowledge amongst the lands that they conquered, because they were good politicians, you know, and very good soldiers. And for the most part, I would say that they ruled their subject peoples with considerable intelligence.
I see. Your Majesty,
Yes.
could you tell us just how did Julius Caesar come to rule the Roman Empire?
Well, he had always been a great general, and the Roman Senate was a somewhat shaky institution, considered as a ruling body. So Caesar formed an alliance with another general, Pompey the Great, and an officer named Crassus, because the three men were very disturbed with the way the Senate had treated them. But unfortunately, in 53 BC, after Crassus was killed in battle, Caesar and Pompey became enemies. And Pompey persuaded the Senate in 49 BC to order Caesar to disband his armies. Well, of course, he refused to do so. Now, I understand that you have an expression, crossing the Rubicon.
Yes.
Well,
That's right.
The Rubicon River was the southernmost limit of Caesar's legitimate area of command. He came down out of Gaul, crossed the Rubicon against the orders of the Senate, marched on Rome, broke through, and chased the armies of Pompey all the way to Egypt.
Did he capture him?
No, because when Pompey landed, he was killed on the spot by agents of Ptolemy, my brother.
Your husband, you mean?
Yes, husband, brother, whatever. Anyway, I met Caesar shortly thereafter.
What kind of a man was Julius Caesar, Your Majesty?
Caesar, there is no one like him in your time. Intellectually, he was remarkable. He was a great military commander and a skillful political manipulator, and he had a very good head for money, no matter what anyone says. And of course, he was an able author, too, as all of you know who have had to translate his commentaries in school. Remember Omnia Gallia in
Res partis divisa est.
Well, good for you, Mr. President.
Harvard.
Now, when you and Caesar met,
Yes.
Your Majesty,
Yes.
I hope you won't consider this too personal a question, but did he become interested in you right from the start?
To use your modern expression, yes, sir, it was. Love at first sight.
Was it love at first sight for you, too?
Oh, of course not. Well, naturally, I was greatly impressed by the great Caesar because, as I've told you, he was a really, truly great man and enormously attractive. But, gentlemen, I must confess that my interest in him initially was in what he could do for my country.
Now, what were the circumstances, if you don't find too many unfortunate recollections awakened by this question, what were the circumstances leading to Caesar's death?
Well, unfortunately, Mr. Allen, some of the members of the Senate were very jealous of Caesar because of his great power. And Cassius induced Brutus to join a conspiracy that was forming against Caesar, and on the Ides of March in 44 BC, he was stabbed to death as he entered a meeting of the Senate. Just think of it, gentlemen. He had ruled the Roman Empire for only 6 months.
Did he really say, et tu, Brute, you too, Brutus?
Oh, indeed he did, Mr. President. He was always very fond of Brutus, you see. And, in fact, it was my belief that Brutus was his illegitimate son.
I never knew that.
Well, I'm not surprised.
Well, now, Your Majesty, you've told us a great deal about Caesar.
Yes.
And there's one thing that's not entirely clear in my mind. If he
What is
was as great a man as you say, and I'm willing to accept your report, then it's not entirely clear why was he assassinated?
Oh, that strikes me as a rather strange question coming from an American. I understand that your country has in recent years seen 3 of its important men assassinated.
Well, once Caesar was dead, I suppose you no longer had any reason to remain in Rome, did you?
No, that's true, Mr. President. I took my small son and returned to Egypt because when Caesar was killed, a great many things died. Among them, the dream of a world empire that Julius and I shared.
Well, thank you, Your Majesty, for that fascinating account, wouldn't you say, Mr. President? Our next guest is a truly unusual figure, even in this august company. He's regarded as one of the great philosophers of history, and the odd thing about that is that he saw himself not as a philosopher at all. The philosophers in his mind were all pagans, but he saw himself as a theologian, which indeed he was. He lived in an age when faith was very powerful, and reason was, I suppose, held in lower regard, and perhaps because he took faith for granted, he preached the power of reason. Although his philosophy, some 600 years later, in 1879, was finally proclaimed as the official philosophy of the Catholic Church, believe it or not, in his own day, 13th century, his views were actually regarded by many of his fellow churchmen as a terrible collection of heresies. I think St. Bonaventure was one of those who would have said that. Anyway, here is the dangerous radical of the 13th century, Father Thomas Aquinas. Very honored indeed, Father, to have you with us.
Oh, it is my pleasure, Mr. Allen, to address your audience. Good heavens! What wonders might have been worked in my day had we been able to address millions in an instant as you can now.
Ah, interesting point. In what year were you born, Father?
1225 in a small town near Naples.
Ah, you were Italian, a descendant of the Romans.
Oh, no, Your Majesty. Though, of course, I spent many of my years in Italy, my people were German and Norman. My father, Count Landulf of Aquina, belonged to the German nobility. My mother was descended from the Norman princes that ruled Sicily at the time.
We've heard, Father, that as a student, you were called the dumb ox. Now, is that correct?
Yes, I'm afraid it is, Mr. President. Though I don't recall being all that dumb. However, from the start, I was rather slow and, shall we say, methodical at getting the grasp of the subject.
Where did you receive your early schooling, Father?
At the Abbey of Monte Cassino. I understand it was destroyed in your Second World War.
Yes, it's a pity it was attacked, Father.
It's been restored, however, since then, Father.
Yes, it is a pity, Mr. President, but Monte Cassino was, I assure you, quite accustomed to attack. You see, in my day, it was a fortress as well as a monastery. It was taken and plundered on a number of occasions. Of course, it was never subjected to such awesome weapons that are known in the present day. At any event, at the age of 14, I entered the University of Naples.
Was it a great university at that time?
Oh, yes, Mr. Allen. The intellectual climate was most stimulating. The philosophy of Aristotle was taught at the university. The culture of ancient Greece was very influential, as indeed were Hebrew and Arabic influences.
I suppose your family must have been quite happy that you decided to become a priest at so early an age?
Strange enough, Mr. Allen, on the contrary. They were quite horrified.
Really?
Yes, I thought they'd never stop arguing with me. In fact, the situation became so serious that when I entered the Dominican order, my mother sent 2 of my brothers to kidnap me.
Incredible.
Yes, I was taken to the family castle at Roca Seca and kept more or less a prisoner there for nearly a year. But my mind was made up, and so my family eventually released me. And I was able to continue my studies in Paris, where I had the great good fortune to study under Albertus Magnus, Albert the Great.
I understand.
Her Majesty speaks fluent Latin, Father.
It was about this time that your dumb ox business came up, Mr. President, but I'm very glad to say that Albert kindly defended me against all my critics.
Tell me, Father, was yours an exciting age to live in?
Oh, tremendously so, Mr. President. Europe had just come out of what are now called the Dark Ages. There was beginning to be some mitigation of barbarism and depravity, and conditions were improving for many people. The feudal age was not without its faults, but it was certainly not without merit. Perhaps most important of all, the Christian faith began to seem less forbidding and pessimistic than it had in earlier centuries, and was being transformed into a more reasonable and appealing doctrine. I suppose I was, in a measure, somewhat responsible for such evolution. But St. Francis and Pope Innocent III must also be mentioned in this connection.
Tell me, how did it come about, Father, that the combating of heresy was your particular task?
Ah, well, you see, Mr. Roosevelt, the church at that time, and indeed, I believe the present day, there were many religious orders.
Yes.
For example, the Benedictines. They were named after St. Benedict. They founded monasteries across the face of Europe where the lamp of learning was kept burning bright, when it otherwise might have gone out. Then there were the Carthusians. Oh, they lived by a remarkably strict set of rules.
Could you tell us about them?
Indeed, yes. Each Carthusian monk lived a life of poverty in a cell, fasted 3 days of each week on bread and water alone. They wore painful hair shirts and spent literally all their time in prayer, meditation, and manual labor.
You mean they were slaves?
Oh, no, Your Majesty.
But they lived like slaves.
With one very important distinction.
What?
The Carthusians decided to live such lives. Slaves have no choice. Now, where were we? Ah, yes, the Cistercians. Did you know, for example, by the middle of the 12th century, more than 300 Cistercian monasteries were receiving many converts to the faith?
Over 300 monasteries?
300.
No, I didn't know that.
And of course, we mustn't forget the Franciscans, the followers of St. Francis of Assisi. The Franciscans were not just another kind of monk. They were more like laymen. They did not shut themselves up in monasteries, but went about preaching what today, I suppose, would be called the social gospel.
Good for them.
Yes, they did admirable social and welfare work, along with their preaching and teaching of the faith. You see, like St. Francis, they sought to make the world a more pleasant place in which to live. And lastly, there was my own order, the Dominicans.
Dominicans,
Yes, the Dominicans. We were founded in 1215 by Saint Dominic, a Castilian nobleman living at that time in the south of France. The Dominicans took upon themselves the special task of combating heresy. Hence, it was only natural that I would specialize in such an endeavor. Heresy has always been...
I said, what's going on?
I can wait no longer.
Oh, that must be our fourth guest, Thomas Paine. Would you excuse me? I'll find out. Pardon me, Your Majesty, just a moment. See if it is indeed. One moment. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Thomas Paine.
What did I...
Some of the things Aquinas here was saying.
See, here, Paine.
I heard everything you were saying, Aquinas, and I feel I should be present at this
You
table.
ought to take your turn like the rest of us.
Well, you all seem to be in such
Mr. Paine,
pleasant
if you
accord that
please, I hate to interrupt you, sir, but I think I should formally introduce you so that the ladies and...
Very well, sir.
All right, please, seat yourself, Mr. Paine. Make yourself
Your
at home.
Majesty.
Oh, dear. Well, Thomas Paine was one of the heroic and somewhat flamboyant figures of the American Revolution, but because of his views on religion, certain people have disapproved of him over the years, among them, in fact, former President Roosevelt. How did you describe Thomas Paine, sir?
Well, I called him a dirty little atheist.
And in so doing, sir, you lied.
I most certainly
Gentlemen,
did not.
please
Look,
stop this unseemly bickering and continue with the topic of our conversation.
Please do, but
Now,
I
Father.
shall be part of it.
Very well, Father. Against just what philosophers of your own period did you pitch yourself?
Well, for a long time, I was chiefly concerned in combating the views of Averroes, Your Majesty. Averroes. He lived slightly before my time, but so influential was he that his opinions formed the basis for a very dangerous heresy across the face of Europe.
Well, just what were the dangerous views of Averroes, Father?
Well, for one thing, he taught that the laws of nature rule the world without any interference from God.
Good for him.
Many believe that sort of thing today, of course.
He also taught that the soul dies with the body, and that heaven and hell are just fairy tales invented to encourage or terrify simple people into decency.
I like this fellow Averroes.
His views sound very much like those of modern man.
Was he a Christian?
Oh, no, Your Majesty, he was the most influential philosopher from Islam, the religion of Muhammad.
Oh, yes, I'm aware.
His home was in Spain, which, as you probably know, was ruled by the Moors of North Africa for many centuries. Indeed, Averroes' father and grandfather had been chief justices of the city of Cordova. In 1169, Averroes himself was made chief justice, but of the city of Seville.
Oh, he sounds very interesting. What kind of man was he?
Well, Your Majesty, as a physician, he was nothing short of brilliant. For many years, his Encyclopedia of Medicine was used in schools and colleges simply because no Christian medical document could equal it. Oh, he contributed many important writings, not only on his famous commentary on Aristotle, but logic, physics, theology, astronomy.
And for all this, you despised him?
Oh, no, Mr. Paine. I opposed only his views, and not all of them. I should like to make a point here, if I may, Mr. Howard.
Certainly, Father.
That modern man seems to have lost sight of. We must learn to respect our enemies. First, of course, because the law of Christian charity commands it, but even considered selfishly, for the very simple reason that we have much to learn from them. Of course, this obviously does not mean that a man must agree with everything his opponent says, which in any case is impossible. But what it does mean is we must not let anger motivate defense of our own views to the point that we lose sight of the wisdom that others can teach us. I maintain that I was able to sharpen my own intellect, such as it was, by honing it against views I could not accept.
Thank you, Father. Most interesting point indeed. Now, Mr. Payne, we have a great deal that we'd like, sir, to...
Sir, before you put any questions to me, I should like to address Brother Aquinas here directly, if I may.
Well, is that all right with you, Father?
It's not only all right, Mr. Allen, it appears to be inevitable.
All right, Mr. Payne.
Tell me, Father, in your voluminous writings, would you assert that you are correct about everything?
Certainly not, sir.
Then if you were not correct about everything, you must have been wrong about some things, and if you were mistaken in any one case, you might have been mistaken in any other.
Yes, Mr. Payne, that would follow. Would you argue that I was mistaken about everything?
Oh, I would not, sir.
Ah.
I would not.
Then I were not mistaken about all things. It would follow, would it not, that I must have been right about some. I think it would have behooved you, Mr. Payne, to determine those instances when I was in the right.
Splendid, Father, splendid. Can you give us an instance, Mr. Payne, in which St. Thomas was mistaken?
I can indeed, sir, and have come prepared to do so. In your Summa Theologica, Father, in Volume 2 on the subject of the possible existence of planets other than our own Earth, you say, and I quote, "It is not possible for there to be another Earth than this, because every Earth would naturally be carried to this central one wherever it was." Is that a glaring enough error for you, Mr. Roosevelt?
I concede the error, Mr. Payne.
And in your summary against the Gentiles, Father, in Book 3 on the subject of miracles, you assert that while animals are born according to the biological procedure, even as you and I, you accept the uncommon belief that the low animals, such as the insects, can be originated not from their own ancestors, but from putrefaction, from waste matter. Well, since such a thing has never happened, you were in error, were you not?
I was indeed, Mr. Payne. I always spoke as a theologian, you see. I never made any pretense at the special knowledge of physical sciences. The belief to which you refer was common in my day. Now, you yourself, Mr. Payne, you have been party to certain scientific opinions common in your own day that have later been shown to be false. We are all, sir, limited by the scientific knowledge available in our own time.
Yes, Mr. Payne, a 10-year-old schoolboy today can know more about science than the most learned men of earlier centuries.
Isn't it a pity, then, that unscientific opinions are not more often expressed with more humility and less an air of certitude?
I agree. Perhaps, Mr. Payne, my errors under the heading of science were inherent in the nature of that system of thought known as scholasticism. You see, being rationalistic, they were therefore based upon logic and reason, rather than upon experimental observation and science.
Well, so I should like to make it clear that there is some significance to these errors of facts in the writings of Thomas Aquinas. In chapter 103 of the Summary Against the Gentiles, he says, yes, that the eyes of a menstruating woman can affect a mirror. I assert that scattered throughout the works of Thomas Aquinas, there are many such instances of groundless superstition. Now, that the learned doctor was a gifted practitioner of the art of logic and a profound and prolific philosopher as well, I would not dream of denying. But when time and again he bases his arguments on material things that are supposed to be the case, but are in essence nonsense, well, then I feel we should be on our guard in listening to him.
Should be on your guard when listening to anyone, Mr. Payne, including yourself. I mean, even those of us who intend to speak only the truth will occasionally be mistaken. No one has totally spoken the truth except God.
But, sir, it is not enough to say that your mistakes were only in regard to scientific or technical matters. I can demonstrate where you are mistaken in what you would call theological matters as well.
Can you indeed?
I can, Father. Aha. Here in paragraph 7, chapter 104 of the summary, you say, and I quote, "The power of self-movement is subsequent to the possession of a soul, for it is proper to animated beings for them to move themselves." You assert here, then, that cats, dogs, cows, lizards, and heaven knows what other kind of animals all have souls?
Yes, sir, that is what I wrote. You see, the word animal comes from the Latin word anima,
So
meaning
one
spirit.
understands. So one understands, Father. But you have also written that there are certain Christian doctrines and beliefs that, such as the Trinity, 3 persons in one God, and so forth, that are incapable of being grasped by the intellect. Yet you also speak of your profound respect for the power of reason.
That is right, sir.
Well, sir, I share your respect for the goddess reason, but I cannot see how you can accept doctrines that are clearly contrary to the reason you claim to respect.
Oh, you misapprehend me, sir.
Do I, Father?
Yes, while affirming that certain doctrines are incapable of being grasped by man's limited intellectual capacity, I deny these doctrines are contrary to reason. God himself is a completely rational being, and through his sacred scriptures he cannot have taught us anything that would be contrary to his own supreme reason. But this does not mean that a man must stand mute and helpless before this impenetrable wall. He can leap it with faith. There is more than enough on his own side of the wall to occupy a man's time and attention. If a man cannot keep peace in his own home, if he cannot keep the waters of his own soul untroubled, I don't think it matters very much that he is unable to measure the mind of God.
Oh, yeah. I find all this talk about abstract matters a frightful bore. Now, no, really and truly. Let's talk about more practical things.
Such as?
Well, what are your views on womankind?
Oh, dear. I'm afraid they will find very little favor in the present century, Your Majesty.
Really?
You see, like Aristotle, I held that nature at each birth properly wished to produce a male.
Really?
And that if a female were produced, it was the result of something defective or accidental.
Oh, Father. No one, neither Aristotle nor yourself, has any way of knowing what nature wishes. And if nature got what you imagine to be her wishes, only males would be produced and the human race would shortly disappear.
I also argued that woman contributed only passively to the creation of the species, though, of course, subsequent biological knowledge has proved me an error on that point.
Well, I should think so.
I argued that woman was the weaker sex in body, mind, and will.
Oh, preposterous.
I asserted that the sexual appetite was more predominant in woman than in man. Though, of course, as regards either alternative, I could not speak from personal experience.
Father, didn't it ever occur to you that woman and man need each other?
I wrote that woman needs man in everything, whereas man needs woman only for procreation.
Oh, my goodness.
I've always taken it as self-evident that man can accomplish all things better than woman, even those tasks normally considered womanly, such as the care of the home, cooking, making of clothing. Even in these crafts, I say, the most able practitioners are men. I also took it as self-evident that woman was unfit to fill any high place in church or state.
Uh-oh.
Ah, did you indeed? Then what did you think of all the queens and princesses of antiquity, not to mention your own period of European history?
In my experience, madam, queens and princesses reigned in the unhappy absence of kings and princes. And were therefore relatively inferior, even in such high positions.
Oh, it's insufferable.
It has always seemed...
Insufferable.
It has always seemed most reasonable to me that woman should look upon man as her natural master and should submit to his correction and discipline.
What if the woman of a particular pair were intelligent and virtuous, whereas the man were a fool and a boor? What then?
I wrote, Your Majesty, of things as they should be, rather than as they sometimes are. I never claimed infallibility for myself. Infallibility belongs only to popes. Oh, and history has shown that some of my errors were monumental.
Such as?
Well, let's see. Ah, yes. For example, I did not foresee that the Church would one day adopt the doctrine of the Immaculate Conception of the Virgin Mary, which specifies she was born free from the taint of original sin.
Nor did you anticipate the doctrine of the infallibility of Pope.
Well,
Quite
now, if we have little to discuss on that ground, Father, perhaps we might see more eye to eye in regard to political matters.
Oh, dear, I'm inclined to doubt it, Your Majesty. You see, I always thought that society and the state should exist for the benefit of the individual, not that the individual exists for the benefit of the state.
You don't mean it.
I thought you would think otherwise.
Where do you believe is the source of sovereignty of the people then, sir?
Well, sad to say. I observe that there are many at the present moment who feel that the rights of the individual are properly subservient to those of the state. Sovereignty, though it comes from God, is vested in the people. Of course, as a practical matter, it may be inconvenient for the masses to wield power directly, but they generally delegate their sovereignty to some leader.
You mean royalty?
Well, perhaps. But I could never see the legitimacy of purely hereditary rights to the throne, Your Majesty, if you will forgive me, except in such cases when the accession was approved by a subject people.
Which would you prefer, Father? A democracy, an aristocracy, or a monarchy?
Well, each can be good, but only if the laws are good and administered by wise leaders. Perhaps some form of constitutional monarchy is best, where on the one hand, the people are able to depend upon the strength of a single wise ruler, but on the other hand, a written constitution guarantees the rights of the people, so that should that leader, for example, wish to assume more power, the constitution will prevent his doing so.
Well, I must say, Father, your views are much more modern than I might have expected.
I'm not sure that to be called modern in this day and age, Mr. President, is entirely a compliment.
What about economics, Father? Did you concern yourself with it?
Only insofar as it gave rise to moral questions, Mr. President. I did maintain that it was the right of the community of people, through their leaders, to regulate agriculture, industry, and trade for the benefit of the many.
Bully for you, Father.
Tell me, Father, do you favor progressive reform as advocated by friend Roosevelt here, or my own more revolutionary ideas?
Well, each has its proper time and place, as does the conservative bias in preserving order and social continuity. But, Mr. Payne, you and I might both be described as dangerous revolutionaries.
No?
Yes, in fact, it has always saddened me you were never able to perceive the truly revolutionary essence of the Christian message.
How is that?
If I were to ask you who said that a small number of very rich men have been able to lay upon the masses of the poor a yoke little better than slavery itself, to ask you, sir, who might have made such a statement?
Karl Marx or one of the other socialist philosophers?
No, sir. The speaker was Pope Leo XIII. Christ himself said, "Oh, it is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to get into heaven." So although I concede that the power and the authority of the church have often been misused by the powerful for their own ends, the essential message of Christ is still profoundly revolutionary. You, Mr. Payne, you're known as one of the great dissenters of American and European history. But you are not as great a dissenter, sir, as Jesus Christ.
Well said, Father, well said.
Well, since the subjects of dissent and revolution have come up, Mr. Payne, I'm going to put a question to you, if I may. That actually has been puzzling me. Now, as we know, the Canadians and the Australians and others remain perfectly happy under the British flag. Why then was it necessary for the Americans specifically to revolt?
Well, so part of the problem was strictly was economic. You see, the merchants and the manufacturers, who were becoming very powerful at that time in England, resented the competition from the merchants and the manufacturers here in the colonies. For example, in 1750, England passed the Iron Act.
And what was the Iron Act?
The Iron Act prohibited the manufacture of practically all ironware here in the colonies. You see, England's economy operated on the mercantile system. Consequently, London wanted the colonists to produce the raw materials, but to purchase the finished goods, the manufactured goods, from the mother country. You see, England saw herself as the great storekeeper, and we were supposed to be her willing customers.
I see.
In fact, Benjamin Franklin warned England of the folly of such legislation. He pointed out in that, well, it catered to English business interests. It alienated millions here in the colonies.
Yes, you know, it's odd, but if London had listened to the advice of men like Franklin, why, this country today might quite possibly still be attached to England.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, sir, that's possible, but there were many grounds for dissatisfaction, and some of these were along religious lines, providing yet another example, Father, where religion was a destructive rather than a beneficial influence.
How do you mean that, Mr. Payne?
Well, sir, most of the British Army officers were strict Anglicans, Church of England, you know, and they looked down their noses at the peculiar heretics they found in the colonies.
Well, now, Mr. Payne, before we go farther into the subject of the American Revolution, which you played such a very important role, would you mind if I asked you a few personal questions?
I would be insulted if you did not, sir.
All right. You were born in England, weren't you?
Yes, Thetford, Norfolk, 1737.
What did your people do?
My father was by philosophy a Quaker, by trade a corset maker.
How were you educated, Mr. Payne?
great difficulty.
I should think so, Mr. Payne.
Oh,
I spent some time in the charity school and, well, you see, my people were very poor, so they could afford to give me very little formal education. So at the age of 13, I went to work as a corset maker for the miserable wages that prevailed at the time.
in what other fields did you work?
Oh, I tried my hand as a sailor, a teacher, a preacher, a cobbler, a tax collector. Oh, it was in this last capacity that I first became interested in political matters.
I see. Now, how did you happen to get over to America?
It was in 1774, at the age of 38.
Pardon me
I
for
decided-
interrupting you, sir.
Yes.
You mean you got here only 2 years before the events
Yes.
of 76?
Yes.
Most interesting.
As I was saying, I had the very good fortune of meeting Benjamin Franklin, to whom not only I, but the entire civilized world owes an eternal debt of gratitude.
Quite right.
Well, I wanted very much to emigrate to America. I saw very little productive future for myself in England, and Mr. Franklin was good enough to give me a letter of introduction to his son-in-law, Richard Bache, who helped me find work as a tutor. Then I met a gentleman named Robert Aitken, who was preparing to publish a magazine called the Pennsylvania Magazine. Well, I talked myself into the job of editor.
Oh, that's right. You had done a bit of writing in England, hadn't you?
Oh, yes, but nothing I had ever written was published.
Really?
Well, so when Mr. Aitken accepted an article I wrote against slavery, well, that experience of seeing one's words in print for the first time proved to be rather heady wine.
Yes. I suppose it doesn't sound very radical or progressive today to be against slavery, but 200 years ago the situation was quite different, wasn't it?
Very much so, sir. In fact, most of the pillars of society were quite prepared to accept slavery. Some of my colleagues of the revolutionary struggle, Washington, Jefferson, to name but two, themselves had slaves on their plantations.
And why not?
Because it seemed to me that if the principles of independence were valid for mankind, then they ought to be applied to the enslaved Negro as well. Let me ask you a question, sir.
Yes, sir.
What percentage of the population of South Carolina would you say, immediately prior to the revolutionary struggle, consisted of Negroes?
I have no idea, sir. 5%?
5. So the answer is 68%.
68%?
Yes. More than 2/3 of the people of that state were slaves. And in Virginia, Negro slaves made up almost half the population. And as regards the treatment accorded those who merely did what any white man would or should do under the circumstances, which is to rise up to free themselves, out of deference to Her Majesty and the tender sensibilities of many watching this discussion, I shall not describe the atrocities that were inflicted. But I do refer you to your libraries, where you may be edified in learning of the slave revolt of 1712, which took place in New York, and a similar one in 1741.
But, Mr. Payne, there are always a few irresponsible criminals.
Sir, I'm not
who do these
speaking of an
terrible-
irresponsible act committed in a moment of passion and later repented of. The atrocities to which I refer were inflicted by the ruling powers with the full consent of the law.
Tragic.
Tragic indeed, sir. And you may be interested in knowing of the religious affiliations of these that committed those crimes.
There is no defense for it, Mr. Payne.
Oh, come, Mr. Payne. Americans didn't invent slavery. All the nations of my day resorted to it.
Which is just one more crime for which mankind must hold royalty responsible.
Was there no kind word said on behalf of the slaves anywhere in the colonies, Mr. Payne?
Oh, yes, Mr. Roosevelt, but only by the minority. The Quakers, as a matter of fact, my father's people were the only effective opposition to slavery at that time, and some Germans in Pennsylvania, but seems the Quakers were a century ahead of their time in this regard, as they usually are.
These are indeed painful things to contemplate, Mr. Payne.
Yes, indeed, Mr. President. Mr. Payne.
Yes.
Are you sure anything is to be gained by forcing the people to face such realities?
Father Aquinas. You and Mr. Roosevelt are Christians. I assume then you are guided by the admonition that you shall know the truth and the truth shall make you free. While I was opposed to organized religion, I never said that it was all folly. In fact, one of the wise precepts of all faiths is that a man's moral condition is utterly hopeless so long as he believes he is virtuous when in fact he is not. A man cannot be forgiven for a sin if he doesn't even admit he's committed it. Therefore, I think the first step in self-improvement is to concede that an evil deed has been done. That is something to be pondered by not only every man, but by every society, for there is none that is without fault.
Mr. Payne, I understand that among your other advanced ideas was that of international arbitration.
Yes, I was the first to advocate in the colonies that nations ought to arbitrate just as individuals and groups feel obliged to do. I was also the first to expose the absurdity and the criminality of dueling, a savage and a foolish practice. I was also the first to suggest more reasonable ideas concerning marriage and divorce.
Oh,
I was
were you ever married yourself, Mr. Payne?
Twice, Your Majesty. My first wife died in childbirth. My second and I were honorably separated. You see, divorce was impossible under British law at that time.
How quaint.
I understand you Americans are presently very concerned about the care and the rights of animals. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, it is.
Well, once more, you are in my debt.
As you are indebted to your predecessor, St. Francis.
Touché, Father.
The next thing you'll be telling us, Mr. Payne, is that you were one of the first spokesmen for women's liberation.
I was precisely that, sir.
Really?
Yes. The first in the colonies to demand justice for women.
Is that right?
Yes, at my time, you see, women were very definitely second, if not third-class citizens.
Mr. Payne.
Yes.
There is much to your credit that we've gathered this evening, but what accounted for your enmity to the churches?
Part of my fury at the church, Father, if I may speak very frankly, was based on its lamentable failure to practice what it preached. For surely, Father, you must know that the 2,000 years of Christian history has been characterized by an enormous amount of bloodshed, enormous amount of terror, despotism, murder, rape, pillage.
Yes, alas, that is...
And almost every one of those crimes, almost every one of those atrocities has been justified with an appeal to a religious or a spiritual cause. So, I would say that the greatest fault of religion was hypocrisy.
Hypocrisy is a terrible failing.
Oh, there are many evil men. We all do our share of evil, Father. But to do evil while professing virtue. Well, as I've said, I felt a deep sense of outrage at the injustices suffered by so many innocent people.
And no doubt you considered yourself virtuous while rebelling against your rightful king.
Yes, Your Majesty.
Yes, oh.
Incidentally, it might interest you to know that I did not at first call for revolution. Like many of us in the colonies were hoping for an honorable reconciliation between England and the colony states, but by the time of the Battle of Lexington, I realized that all such hopes were in vain.
With your Quaker background, Mr. Payne, and your reputation as a man of peace before the Revolution, did you have any difficulty in accepting the idea of revolutionary war?
Yes, indeed, Mr. Preston. The philosophical transition was extremely painful for me, as it was for many in the colonies. I went through a series of steps. First, resentment at injustice, then peaceful protest, then petition for the redress of grievances, then a stage of rebellion, and only at the very last, full-scale revolutionary purpose.
Well, while I disagree with your theological views, Mr. Payne, you certainly merit my respect as one of the leaders of the American Revolution.
Thank you, sir.
Speaking of the American situation, Mr. Payne, how does the situation in this country today appear to you?
Well, see, you don't seem to appreciate what you have. Perhaps it's because you know so little of the tragic suffering of common people in ages past. One of the saddest things about this country today, Mr. Allen, is its lack of interest in history.
Now that is true, Mr. Payne.
It is no wonder that you know so little about what's happening now when you've paid so little attention to the past.
Absolutely. Very true.
The past has created your present and all the problems that perplex you.
Exactly.
Well, now, sir, if we don't know as much as we should about European history or ancient history, well, you're no doubt correct about that, we're pretty well informed about American history, aren't we?
Are you serious? I'll wager there's not a person in the audience who could pass the most elementary examination about the history of this great country.
Perhaps you're right.
Well, how can you understand revolution today when you don't even understand the revolution of 200 years ago in America?
You believe we don't?
Of course not, sir. You don't know what the essence of the revolution was. You all think it was the war with Great Britain. But as John Adams told us, that was not the essential part of the revolution. That was the effect, the consequence. The real revolution was in the hearts and in the minds of the people before even a drop of blood was shed at Lexington.
Well, sir, the Americans as a peaceful people
Peaceful?
do have
You
a
don't
certain...
hold yourself, sir.
What?
Will you call yourself peaceful here now? You never have been a peaceful people, except for a few rare individuals whom the rest of you often treat quite savagely. But how could it be otherwise? When you're descended from all the savage tribes of Europe to whom peace has traditionally been only a last resort.
Agreed, Mr. Payne. For peace generally calls for an exercise of the grand faculties of generosity, compassion, humility, whereas war permits the free flow of all those savage passions from which we seem to derive so much comfort.
Well, now, Father...
Your Majesty, I do hate to interrupt you under any circumstances, but particularly now we have run out of time. But I do hope that you'll join us for our next discussion so that we continue exploring some of these points that have been raised. Would you all be able to do that?
I should like to.
Certainly.
Thank you very much. If you'll excuse me for just a moment. Those of you at home who tune in, perhaps as a regular thing, to certain television programs hoping to see big-name guests, well, we hope you have been properly impressed. And to keep you happy, we hope on future programs to present Sigmund Freud, Sun Yat-sen, Catherine the Great, Abraham Lincoln, and others who, for better or for worse, affected history, which is to say, actually had some effect on your life, very literally. And now there are those who say that the art of conversation is, in our time, dead. If that's true, we hope perhaps to revive it on Meeting of Minds by introducing you to others of the important thinkers and doers. We'd also like to know what you think about what we do here, so please do let us hear from you. Thank you very much.
This program was produced by KCET TV, which is solely responsible for its content.